Just kill me fast. Rancher opens blanket, stumbles back in horror. Some men don't die from bullets. They die from the silent weight of unspoken words, from avoiding confrontations they should have faced head-on. Have you ever lain awake at night, haunted by the missed opportunity to set things right? Will Smith had. Years had passed since anyone had truly acknowledged his existence. The world continued its relentless march, oblivious to his presence. One day he had a wife, the next only an empty space behind the barn, a stark reminder of loss. That morning, Will wasn't searching for anything specific, just another broken fence to mend, when he spotted the sack. It hung askew beneath a low-hanging cottonwood, swaying gently in the breeze, the sort of thing a prudent man would ignore. Trouble rarely announces its arrival with a bark. But something about the sack felt wrong, eerily still, unsettlingly quiet. He approached cautiously, his eyes narrowed beneath the brim of his hat. The sack wasn't securely tied, more like hastily tossed and partially caught, the burlap torn and sun-bleached. Dark stains marred the bottom. Then he heard it, a sound that would forever etch itself into his memory. Not a scream, not a cry, but a faint, ragged breath, undeniably human. He dismounted slowly, deliberately. The sack shifted. Inside lay a young woman, perhaps 25 years old. Her dress was ripped, her skin dry and blistered, her lips cracked and bleeding. A rusted wire still encircled one wrist. She didn't plead, didn't scream. Her voice, devoid of hope, uttered a single, chilling request. Just kill me fast. Will froze, then knelt, gently pulling back the thin covering. The sight that met his eyes twisted his gut, not because the wounds were fresh, but because the perpetrator's intent was so clearly evident. Not to kill her outright, but to erase her existence. The ranch was unremarkable. A dusty porch, 2 creaky, unused chairs, and a roof that groaned with every gust of wind, like a man nursing a brutal hangover. Yet, for her, it offered the closest semblance of safety she'd experienced in years. Will didn't ask her name, her story, or the reasons behind her plight. He asked nothing. Perhaps that's why she stayed, though she couldn't sleep in the bed. She huddled on the floor beside the stove as if fearing the mattress itself might turn against her. The hiss of the kettle made her flinch. She constantly watched the door, expecting it to burst open at any moment. Most days she spoke little, merely accepting whatever Will poured into her tin cup, picking listlessly at her bread as if it might be poisoned. But she was still there, and that in itself meant something. Will wasn't a man of many words either. He worked steadily, mending fences, feeding livestock, bringing her meals with a quiet routine. And perhaps it was just that, a routine, a silent understanding. Their shared quietude became a language of its own. A week passed, and then one morning, while Will chopped wood, she emerged, her hair bound with a strip of cloth, her shoulders straight, though stiff, as if reacquainting herself with an upright posture. She said nothing, merely observing his steady swings of the axe. Then she reached for a log. He didn't stop her. They chopped wood in silence, 2 souls who had exhausted their words long before they ever met. Later that night, she whispered a single sentence. "You didn't touch me." Will looked at her, but remained silent. A single nod from her conveyed more than any spoken words could have, and for the first time, she finished her meal, every bite. She even smiled, a small, hesitant smile, but genuine nonetheless. If that had been the end of the story, it might have been a tale of healing, of good men and second chances. But healing rarely comes easily, especially when the past resurfaces with a vengeance. The quiet didn't last. It rarely does in these parts. It began with hoof prints, deep, fresh impressions in the dirt near the south fence line. Will noticed them at dawn as the sun broke the horizon. They weren't his, nor did they belong to anyone from town. He said nothing to her, merely checked his rifle and patrolled the perimeter twice that day. That night, She sat closer to the fire, confessing her inability to sleep, her unsettling feeling that something was amiss. Then came the name, branded into the inside of her wrist like a searing mark, a crude tattoo, JKS. Will recognized it. Years earlier, he'd encountered a drunken man outside Bisbee who boasted about deeds no man should be proud of. Back then, Will had averted his gaze, choosing not to become entangled in another's mess. But now, that name was seared onto her skin, making it undeniably his problem too. He rode into Tombstone the next morning, not to speak, but to listen. 3 girls missing in the last 4 months, 2 from Texas, 1 from Santa Fe, all under 25, vanished without a trace. Their disappearances met with apathy and inaction. The sheriff cited a lack of witnesses, evidence, and the need to avoid public panic. Will nodded, thanked him, and rode away, appearing outwardly calm, but inwardly shattered. This time, it wasn't just about justice, it was personal. That night, under the flickering oil lamp, she asked him why he'd gone to town. He didn't look up, continuing to clean his rifle, and responded softly, "Sometimes bad men need to know someone's still watching." Her hand briefly rested on his, a fleeting touch that spoke volumes. In that moment, he realized this wasn't just a second chance for her, it was his, too. If you've followed this far, you might understand a thing or two about the way the world works, about how justice often operates outside the confines of law enforcement. If so, stay with me, because there's more to this story. And if it resonates with you, don't be a stranger. Subscribe. We have more fires to ignite together. Will didn't storm in like a character from a dime novel. He moved with quiet precision, traversing dry creek beds and narrow canyons known only to locals and coyotes. He discovered the camp just after sunset, a dilapidated shack nestled against the cliff face, smoke curling from its chimney, laughter and harsh voices emanating from within, sounds that sent shivers down his spine. He tethered his horse to a low branch and stealthily approached from the rear, biding his time until the clinking of bottles reached its 3rd iteration, a moment when men tended to be less vigilant. He burst through the door. The first man reacted instantly, too quickly. He received the butt of Will's rifle squarely in the chest. The second man lunged for his belt. Will fired a warning shot directly into the lantern, shattering the glass and engulfing the room in smoke and sparks. The third man dropped his knife before it even left the table. No one spoke. Will approached, scooped up the girl cowering in the corner who avoided his gaze. She didn't need to. He covered her with his coat and nodded once on their way out, leaving them with a sentence they wouldn't soon forget. "She's not yours. She never was. And if I hear you touch another girl again, you won't get a second warning." He brought the girl to Tombstone. The sheriff seemed inclined to argue, but the sight of the broken blade and the girl's blood-stained dress on his desk silenced any objections. This time the law functioned as it should. Back home, she stood waiting by the gate, neither crying nor questioning. Her gaze suggested the possibility, a glimmer of hope, that not all men were bad. And Will, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, felt a sense of purpose, a feeling that he had stood for something meaningful. Let me assure you, justice is rarely effortless, but when it arrives, it endures. If stories like this feel authentic, it's perhaps because deep down, you've lived a few of its chapters yourself. It wasn't a love story in the conventional sense, not the kind found in cheap paperbacks or whispered under porch lights, but it was something profound. She remained, not out of obligation, but out of choice. The days grew quieter, yet gentler. She began tending the garden, planting herbs as her grandmother had taught her, brushing the horses without flinching, even humming softly while sweeping the porch. Will observed these changes without comment. Some things lose their impact when rushed into words. He continued mending fences, rising before dawn, but now a second cup sat on the table each morning. A pair of boots, not his, rested by the door. She slept in the room across the hall, a comfortable distance that still felt intimately close. Some evenings they shared coffee under the stars, their companionship more eloquent than any conversation. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she posed a simple question. "Why did you come back for me?" He pondered for a moment, then answered, "Because someone had to." She nodded. That was all that needed to be said. Life doesn't always provide what we deserve, but sometimes it offers us someone who recognizes our inherent worth, and that can transform everything. Will never asked her to stay, and she never promised she would. But each morning she opened the door, and each night she returned home. Love, it turns out, doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it arrives quietly, like rain on weathered wood, like forgiveness, like a fresh start. Now, let me ask you this. What would you do if someone appeared at your doorstep in desperate need of more than just shelter? Would you avert your gaze and pretend you didn't see their plight? Or would you open that door, perhaps saving a piece of yourself in the process? If this story stirred something within you, if it served as a reminder that redemption still holds significance in our imperfect world, please tap that like button. And if you believe in stories filled with heart, grit, and authenticity, please subscribe. We have more to share, some already written, others waiting to be told. And perhaps, just perhaps, one of them might be yours.